Hello everybody, it is Ben back again, and because my last video was kind of just pretty bleh, and just wanted to kind of get that last video over with, I thought I'd come back now and do a bit more detailed of sort of season post-mortem, I guess, or just recap or whatnot. Anyway, getting right into it, was anybody else far more disappointed by this year than last? That might be because by, say, January, February mark of last year, we were kind of starting to realize that we shouldn't have too many expectations for the season. This season had a lot of expectations behind it, and a first round exit was not one of them. It can't be seen as an improvement, and that's one thing. One thing I did like one thing of very few I did like in Bergevin's press conference yesterday was he said yes, he was indeed disappointed by the first round exit. I thought he was going to try to pull some crap and be like, oh well, it was an improvement from last year, but he didn't, so that was good. But getting right into it, I think the easiest thing to start off with breaking down is the series. And the biggest stat line I could think of, Carey had a .933 save percentage and a 1.86 goals against average in the series. If your goalie gives you that and you still can't win a series, it wasn't your goalie's fault. The Habs, this topic is getting old after probably 5 years or so now, well, probably longer, but like seems as though ever since Bergevin been brought in, yeah, we're lacking offense, we're going to fix that. They still haven't fixed that, and it's not going to get any better with the and for what I see, that area is not going to get any better from all the signs Bergevin's been giving off. We're going to start with the negatives on the season. Alex Galchenyuk, one of the best prospects we've had in a long time when he got drafted. One of the most dynamic offensive players we've had as a team in a long time, probably since, other than PK Subban, who's now gone. And that shirt's not up there because I'm going to be a Shea Weber basher. That shirt's just up there because Subban and the Predators are who I'm rooting for now in the playoffs, so that's just why it's there. But Alex Galchenyuk is 5 years into his development in the NHL, and he still doesn't have a place. He doesn't have a designated place in the lineup. Before this season, they said it was going to be first-line center. That was going to be his place. And that lasted about 20 games, maybe. Maybe it might have even been shorter. I don't know. It didn't last. And he just got jerked around everywhere all season. Either keep him, put him in a role, leave him there. If he starts to struggle, leave him there still anyway, because he's not going to figure it out if you don't leave him in one place. Or if you're not going to use him to the best of his ability, then trade him. Because it's not fair to him to keep him around and keep bringing him up and down the lineup. And he's not where you're at right now in his development, no, but he's not going to develop any further unless you leave him in a place to get better. And that's the biggest thing. Even if the Habs had managed to get past the Rangers in this first round, there's no chance they would have made it past. They might have made it past the second round because Ottawa and Boston are two weaker opponents that they probably could have had an easy time with. But they wouldn't have made it past either of Washington or Pittsburgh. It wouldn't have happened. They're not going to outscore Washington or Pittsburgh in the conference finals. That would be insane to think. They couldn't. They scored, I think it was 11 goals against the Rangers all of that series. Against the Rangers. Sure, Lundqvist looked good, and there were some bad bounces in the post, but you have to be able to finish. You just have to. It's the playoffs, and they didn't. Bergevin said offense wasn't available at the trade deadline, but that simple fact is that's just not true. There's probably more examples, but the three players he went after that were his big moves of the day was Steve Ott, Dwight King, and Andreas Martinson, which... Okay, he was saying because offense wasn't available at the right price, he's going with bigger and hopefully he'll be able to grind it out, which is such a 2011 mentality that it hurts, and it's probably going to continue to hurt the Habs as the future goes on. But the thing is, there were other players available. Anaheim got Patrick Eaves for a second rounder. So far, he has a goal and 2 assists in their series. We could have used an extra goal and 2 assists in our series. He was, I think he got close to 30 goals. He might even hit 30 in the regular season. So clearly he's got a touch. He was available for a second rounder. I'm pretty sure Jerome McGinley went for a third rounder. I'm not saying Jerome McGinley is the answer to all of our offensive woes, but I think he would have been more helpful as an offensive threat than Dwight King was, and we paid third rounder for Dwight King. We paid a sixth rounder for Steve Ott, and the Bruins paid the same thing for Drew Stafford, and he had 2 goals in their 6 games. I'm not saying any of these players are the be-all, end-all answer to the Canadiens' offensive woes, but to say that there was not any offense available for the right price at the deadline is just simply not true. There was options there. Bergevin just didn't go after them, and it came back to bite them in the one series they played. And probably a more startling stat is the guy that they traded away for Andreas Martinson, Sven Andrighetto, went to Colorado and had 16 points in 19 games with the Avalanche to finish out the year. That was the Avalanche that finished last overall in the NHL with 48 points and a negative 112 goal differential. Sven Andrighetto did that onto that team. Just the way Bergevin makes moves, he'll do something that is so great, and then he'll come right back around and shoot the team in the foot. The bigger problem is now, Beaulieu seems to be in the hot seat after his season, but the problem is that is the one full-time NHLer you have developed and graduated out of the AHL in all 5 years that that Bergevin's been here. There was Sven Andrighetto. You could argue he was a full-time NHLer that graduated out of the AHL, but he decided to trade him for Andreas Martinson. AHL development has been god-awful for ever since Bergevin's come in. And there's just some things that just don't make sense. Charles Hudon, a good old French boy from Quebec, you could have a French hero for the team that is starved for offense. 27 goals, 22 assists in something like 50-something games for the Ice Caps this year, and he has 4 points in the 6 games he's played in the NHL. But for some godforsaken reason, they don't want to keep him. And on the lesser side, there's somebody who had more points than him, Chris Terry, 30 goals, 38 assists in 58 games. I don't think he's as dynamic of a player as Charles Hudon, but 2 players right there. Right around 60 points in the AHL, both of them left wingers, so that doesn't help your center issue, because center is still the biggest positional issue for the Canadiens, but the 2 players right there, great, they're sitting in the AHL, great. Like I said, biggest problem is at center, and I am getting really, really tired of hearing at every single end of the season press conference with Marc Bergevin, I'm getting so tired of him saying how hard it is to get a number 1 or number 2 seed. He said it for 5 years now, and there's just so many things that show it to be not true. Ryan O'Reilly has been traded in the last few years. There are some other examples. I think Kyle Turris was an example that Ottawa got in a trade. There's been centers that have been available that are really good centers. Bergevin's just not somebody who's willing to pay the price to make those trades. And to a certain extent, I get that. You don't want to jeopardize your entire team's future for one move that might not end up panning out. But when it's been something that has been a problem since before he even arrived, since before Bergevin arrived, center ice position was a problem for the Canadiens. Probably for a solid 5 to 10 years before he arrived. It still is. So you got to do something. And they haven't been drafting well ever since he arrived. And it's very hard to get free agents to sign in Montreal unless they're Russians, I guess. But you got to do something. You got to make a move. I don't know what the move is, but I'm also not paid millions of dollars to be an NHL GM. So that's not for me to figure out. That's for him. All right, now I got all that negativity out. Let's go to some positives, because there were some positives from this season. It wasn't a complete just dumpster fire of a season like the year before. The Habs finished first in the division. Obviously, there were some good things. Claude Julien, I still think, is one of the best coaches in the NHL. We have him for, I think, 4 or 5 more years. I'm not sure. That's great. I don't think he would have the same talent in the next few years as he would have if he had been brought in 2 or 3 years ago, but granted he wasn't available 2 or 3 years ago, but now we have a good coach minus a lot of the talent that we had. Paul Byron showed that he has another level that we didn't know he had. Finished the year with 22 or 23 goals. crazy year for him. 2 more years of him at $1.1 million. I gotta imagine he's gonna be one of the people protected. I can't see why he wouldn't be. That's just insane value. I don't know if he can follow up this year with just as good of a year, but I think he can come close. Like I said, there are some viable options in the AHL. Charles Hudon, Chris Terry, even Mike McCarron. I wouldn't mind seeing some of the guys that we have right now that are on expiring contracts go and bring some of the kids up. They're not gonna. There's only so much you can do at the AHL level, development wise, before they're just being wasted. I could see them coming up and learning. I mean, I don't see it happening because it's Bergevin, but at this point, it might not be the worst idea, especially with coming into a bit of a cap crunch soon with some of the contracts they're going to have to sign. Another great thing, Jordy Ben. Like I said, Bergevin is capable of making very, very good moves that I love. Jordy Ben was a fantastic shutdown defenseman, often paired with Jeff Petrie. They worked well together to finish off the season. 2 more years of him at $1.1 million. That is insane value. I gotta imagine he might be one of the defensemen that is also protected. That would be great to keep. He is one of the Bergevin's better acquisitions for the last few years. Arturi Lehkonen promises to be one of the most dynamic offensive players we've had in a long time because Galchenyuk they don't seem to want to do anything with. So he really came on towards the end of the year. He only had 18 goals on the season, but I think what he showed more towards the end of the season into the playoffs is more of what we're going to get as time continues on. So I think his scoring is going to go up in his sophomore season. But more so than that, I think he is just one of the best two-way players the Canadians have had since, well, prime Plekanec years. Plekanec's getting up there in age, but prime Plekanec years, I think he can compete with him. And this might be a bit hyperbolic, but maybe future Selke winner, Arturi Lehkonen, if he continues to develop and play the way he did this year, just only get better, I could see it happening. Another great thing, Max Pacioretty is still signed for 2 more years at $4.5 million. Perennial at least 30 to 35 goal scorer every year. He gets it just about at that money is insane. I know everybody knows that he didn't perform in the playoffs. I get that. That's his playoffs weren't great. He owned up to that. But you got to get to the playoffs, and the idea of trading your top offensive player on a team that is starved for goals just seems ludicrous to me. Another couple of good things that came out at the end of the season, like player press conference when they were packing up their lockers. Carey Price unequivocally says he wants to stay in Montreal. That's fantastic. I partially don't really know why you would want to with the teams that he's been given in front of him over the last few years. I don't know why he would want to stay in Montreal, but hey, I'm not complaining. That's great. Alexander Radulov not quite as final as Price's statement was, but Alexander Radulov made statements that seem to suggest that he really does want to stay in Montreal, but I think that might be a bit tougher of a contract to work out than Price will be because Price is something in Bergevin's... Because Bergevin said he very much wants to keep Price. They were very, very adamant about that, and he was a little less adamant about the Radulov situation. Obviously, you'd love to keep a player like that, but it's going to depend on a lot of things. If the right moves are made in this offseason, which I think they can be, I see another year or two being left in the Habs Cup window. I see that. Shea Weber, while he didn't have a fantastic season, overall, there's not a lot I can complain about in his season, other than the fact that he's not 4 years younger. So I think there still are a few more good years we can get out of him, and that's great. I also would like to see them re-sign Markov because everybody says, he's getting old, but everything that I saw this season and into the playoffs suggests that two of them together can be a fantastic pairing, number one pairing if you limit their minutes. Please do not re-sign any of Martinson, Otter, King, Marc Bergevin. Please, I beg of you. Something tells me at least one of them is going to stay just because That's Bergevin. I just think it's going to happen. But cross our fingers. Hopefully not. Wouldn't mind like I said before, I wouldn't mind seeing some guys from the A come up. Charles O'Donnell, Chris Terry, Mike McCarron, all viable options. I think that they could be playing next season. They just need to give them the chance. So yeah, obviously, disappointing exit. Way too early for my liking and for just about every fan's liking. This spring, it really felt like this could have. I mean, this was easily the most open that the NHL playoffs have been in a long time. With some of the teams that did make it in, I think a lot of East teams are lucky that Tampa didn't make it, as they're starting to get some players back because they're a lot better than their records suggested. I also think the Florida Panthers are a lot better than their record suggested. So if there was ever going to be a year that the Habs could have lucked their way to the Cup Finals, this was going to be their year. I don't know they're going to have as easy a time in the coming years, but hey, that's a long ways off. We got a long off season, too long really. After what we had last year, it's a couple years in a row now where some long off seasons. But there's going to be a lot of excitement. What with the expansion draft, that'll I'm sure cause some shenanigans with some trades and signings and whatnot. So that'll be fun. I'll be back around that time to do kind of my hopeful protected list. Players list video. I'll probably come out around the time of the expansion draft with that. But until then, this is going to be my last video of the first season of HFR. So to anybody that watched any of these videos, I just want to thank you a lot. I know from the early goings until now, it's probably been a bit of a struggle to stay with me with some of the quality of the earlier videos, but I hope I'm getting better, and I'm sure I'll only get better with time. But I'm really excited to keep doing this, and hopefully next year around this time I'll still be going and I won't have to end it quite so early. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.